Hey everybody, it's Brooke with the Buttered Home and welcome to my messy kitchen. Today we're back with a really good kitchen tip. So most of you know already that I am a Sweet Grown Alabama ambassador this year for 2025, and I'm real excited now that the time has changed because soon that means there'll be all kind of produce being planted for harvest this summer and this fall, and I am looking forward to putting up fresh vegetables. The time changes, the sun shines just a little bit, and I'm ready for all things fresh veggies. I don't know about you, but a while back I posted how I like to put up vegetables and I like to freeze them. When we get done, I'll drop a link that teaches you how to blanch vegetables for the freezer. I don't do a lot of pressure canning just simply because I'm a little scared of it. And I'm just being honest with you about that. So I tend to freeze. So the tip that I have for you today is gonna talk about how you can freeze in mason jars and what is the best way to do that. So I'm going to move my camera so you can see what I'm doing. But I have two jars right here. Just simply because they're different sizes so that I can show you the difference in what I'm talking about. But you can get each style of jar in several different measurements. You can get them in pint, in quart, even bigger than that. I saw some that were like a half a gallon yesterday over the weekend. But when you freeze in mason jars, first of all, it's fine to do that. Just don't put a warm glass jar in the freezer. So that can either be a sterilized warm jar or one that you have filled with warm liquid. You always want to let your jar or the contents of the jar come to room temperature before freezing. A lot of people ask me, when I talk about freezing in glass jars like this, number one, what are the health benefits of that? Well, if you've read up much on plastics, you'll know glass is a safer option. You don't have as many chemicals and things leaching into your food. The other question I get is, won't the glass break? Yes, it can, but those are some tips that if you don't put warm contents or a warm jar in the freezer, they're less likely to. You can even take it a step further and place the filled jars in the refrigerator for about 4 hours to completely cool them down before you put them in the freezer. Now, the other tip that I have for you is this is why I carefully curate my jars, because most standard mason or Kerr or ball jars that you get will have what's called a shoulder, and you can get them with wide mouth, but whether they have a wide mouth or a small mouth, you want to look right here where your shoulders would be, just under the neck. And I'm going to try to put my towel here to make it a little easier to see. Where you have like a curve, there's almost a curve right there. That's a shoulder. These with the shoulder are not ideal to freeze in because you're always going to have a bubble in there, and they just don't freeze as well and sometimes can cause breakage. Anytime the glass has been molded to make like this little shoulder, it can sometimes make it susceptible to crack. So you can get these that have the straight sides and no shoulder. So you see from the screw line of the jar, it is you have just the screw line, but this portion here is the same as all of this. And if you were to put your finger in there, it would lay straight. Whereas if you were to put your finger in here, that's probably the best illustration. If you were to put your finger in one with the shoulder, you'll see it's going to have like a little bend to it. So shoulders, no shoulders. The no shoulder is what you want to look for when you're freezing in a glass jar. Now, I personally like the wide mouth jars no matter what I'm freezing. So I tend to look for those with no shoulders that have the really big opening, because it allows for more of the surface area to be filled inside the jar, and you are not left with as big of a bubble in your headspace. So that is one of the things that, if you're like me, you're planning on putting up some vegetables this summer when harvest time gets here, that you can totally do. Now, a lot of people ask me about sterilizing their jars. You can do that very simply on a high temp wash in your dishwasher. You also can drop them into some boiling water here on top of the stove, whatever is easiest for you. So sometimes when people are busy, when they work, have kids, grandkids, things like that, they tend to think that they're too busy to do freezing or canning in glass jars because you have to sterilize everything. Well, most dishwashers have a sterilize function on it. If they don't, they have a high temp wash and a high temp rinse. That also, provided that your water heater is set warm enough, can be a good way to sterilize your jars. And if you do a heated dry as well. Trust me, it gets nice and hot in there. And if you're using these to freeze and not can, they simply only need that high temp, because we're freezing in them. You know, they don't have to be as sterile of an environment as if they were when you're doing high pressure canning, and they have to be shelf stable. So shelf stable, the difference between frozen vegetables and hot water bath canned vegetables is stability. Of course, you're not going to get as long of a time that they'll be good when you freeze. But if you're like us, we tend to eat our harvest or our bounty from last summer before the next summer gets here. So when you can and freeze, they're good for about a year. When you do the hot water bath canning, they're good for longer than that. So you just have to figure out realistically what you have time to do. What is your goal? So are you wanting to put things up for long periods of time? Or are you simply only wanting to preserve fresh vegetables for whenever the winter comes? So freezing and canning may be your best option. I know even now, with it just being me and Big D here, freezing works just fine, really better because there's only two of us. So if you are thinking about planting your own vegetables this year and putting them up, because hey, if you've ever planted cucumbers, if you know, you know, right? You always have too many. We've got lots of good recipes that help you if you do end up with a bunch of cucumbers. But if you did want to can them, you can do that. And I'll drop a link in our YouTube video as well as our Facebook video when we get done on a very simple video that shows you how to prep vegetables, or what my mama always called blanch your vegetables. It's a real easy process. You do a hot water bath and then an ice bath, and then you drain them and dry them, and then you can pack them in jars. We also show you how to do fresh tomatoes that way and how to peel them pretty easy, so that you can can them too. And the great thing about canning your vegetables like that is you can do it with just a little bit of water, or really nothing at all, and they work just fine. A lot of times when I do tomatoes, I just use the juice that kind of cooks off of them and fill the jar up to the brim whenever I freeze them. So we have a lot to look forward to. If you can't tell, I'm excited already. I'm already thinking about getting my spots out here ready for what all I'm going to plant right now, I'm trying to figure out what the weather is going to do so that I can plant some bulbs. I have ranunculus and some irises and things like that I missed the spring planting for the bulbs last year because we were still doing construction out here more or less. So this year I'm gonna sprinkle some color and beauty out all around out here. I'm really excited for that. But like yesterday we had a spring semi-summer day and today it's winter again. Welcome to Alabama, right? I'm sure it's that way where you are too. So just to recap, you don't want shoulders, you want straight sides if you're gonna freeze in glass jars. If you want to sterilize them, you can run them through sterile or the high heat wash, rinse, and dry in your dishwasher, or you can simply use just a hot water bath. Just make sure that if you can to freeze in glass jars, that your contents and your glass is cool before you put them in the freezer. And that will get you freezer stable for 1 year. So we'll share this video and this tip again when we get closer to time, and I may even do some blanching of some vegetables just to kind of give you a recap on that. We would love it if you would subscribe to our channel or follow us depending on what platform you're watching us on. If you haven't already, make sure that you are with us on all of our social platforms. We try to come live every Sunday to give a tip. Some weekends are better than others, but we're trying to get motivated and more active into doing this. When I say we, I mean me. I don't know about y'all, but the winter blues have hit me this year. Not to mention we've been sick since the first of the year, and it's just been kind of hard to get motivated to do much of anything. That sunshine yesterday helped me a little bit, but we're right back in it today, so we'll see. But anyway, we're getting ready for another busy week. Make sure if you're not already that you're signed up to be on our VIP email list. You can do that at thebutteredhome.com. Also find a really good recipe for supper while you're there. But make sure that you sign up for our VIP email list because we send you meal ideas every week in your inbox. Free of charge to you. You can get the free printable recipe. And if you're not signed up for our email list, let's go do that right now. So I'm going to hush so you can do that, and I'll come back and drop the links to those posts on prepping vegetables to blanch to freeze. So from all of us here at The Buttered Home to Your